So the scenario that I was given is with Jason, a 12-year-old American Portuguese boy who lives with his mother and maternal grandmother. His biological father passed away when he was 7, so about 5 years ago, and since then his mother and grandmother have worked in a local factory. So I'm making the assumption that they are probably gone frequently, that Jason spends a lot of time alone, and also noting that they work in a local factory, I'm making the assumption that they are probably not financially secure or stable, and that money could frequently be a concern in this household. Jason was referred by his pediatrician after his last physical due to reports of Jason appearing very on edge, irritable, and reporting difficulty falling asleep due to a lot on his mind. Jason reported to his doctor that since his father died, his mother and grandmother have strongly demanded and expected him to get straight A's because he needs to go to a good college so he can get a good job and support his family. He reports that he is constantly afraid he is disappointing them and doesn't feel like he is working hard enough. The developmental theory that I chose to look at is through Piaget's theory. And Jason, being 12 years old, fits pretty much into the concrete operational level of development, which is defined as typically being ages 7 through 12. So from that aspect, he falls right into it. Typically, these children are able to demonstrate logical, concrete reasoning. Their thinking becomes less egocentric and they become more aware of external events, which really seems to be the case in Jason's situation. They realize their thoughts and feelings are unique and may not be shared by others, so he's able to sort of keep these thoughts to himself without feeling that anyone else knows what he's thinking. These children begin to develop operational thinking or the ability to perform reversible mental actions. Children are not able to tackle a problem with multiple variables in any systematic way at this point too. So this could be a problem that is just overwhelming Jason, or any of his problems are overwhelming to him. I did kind of consider possibly Jason being 12 years old, almost at the next level of development, which is the formal operational level, typically seen with adolescence through adulthood, and these are people who are able to think about multiple variables in systematic ways. And based on the fact that he is struggling with what's going on in his household, he probably does not have the ability to really manage more than one variable in his problems, and that's why I'm really putting him more in the concrete operational level of development at this point. And looking at his assessed needs, I found it interesting in our text notes, Freeman posed that the formation of negative schema-based response tendencies is adapted when core emotional needs are not met at a time when the child is powerless to change their relational environment. And that really hit a chord with me, knowing that his father died when he was 7, just due to those circumstances and what he was dealing with and the rest of his family, particularly his mother. He was probably not getting the emotional support and his emotional needs met. And in light of the mother and the grandmother having to work, and I'm again assuming that they are working a significant amount of time away from the home, he's probably not having a lot of his emotional needs met at all. Basically, forming these maladaptive schemas. So with that in mind, I am looking at Jason as a child who's probably experiencing great anxiety based on the fact that he is dealing with potential abandonment issues, some instability based on his father having passed away at his young age. Likely he and his mother had to relocate from the family home into the grandmother's home, or the grandmother moved in with the the family. Either way, it's a little bit disruptive, especially for a 7-year-old boy. Also noting that he has probably experienced emotional deprivation. The normal degree of emotional support has not been met. Specifically, the deprivation of being nurtured, the deprivation of empathy and lack of understanding, and the deprivation of protection or the lack of strength, which he probably experienced when his father, who I'm assuming was the symbol that he, or what he equated strength or security with, typically being a male figure in the household. In addition, he seems to be seeking approval. There's been an overemphasis on social status, as specifically noted that he doesn't feel like he's working hard enough to get into the good college that his mother and grandmother seem to be pressuring him into doing so that he can provide for the family. And that sort of ties right into the unrelenting standards to meet these high internalized standards that he has set upon himself based on what is being sort of dictated in his home. So that seems to be sort of putting the pressure on him, as it would anyone, but also making him hypercritical of himself. And one other issue that I think may not be as pressing, although it sort of is in tandem with what we'll need to work on, is his need to develop communication skills so that he's better able to advocate for himself when it comes to what he needs and what he wants out of his life, out of his future. He may not necessarily want to go to college. He may have other plans for himself, and he needs to make himself able, or he needs to enable himself to communicate with those who might be pressuring him into doing something that he doesn't want to do. As far as the intervention method that I am considering, my thought is that first we need to address the anxiety before the other behaviors can be considered. And one thought was to encourage him to sort of embrace some relaxation techniques. He states that he has trouble settling down and falling asleep at night, and for any 12-year-old that's a challenge, but I think for someone who has so much weighing on his mind, it could be an exceptional challenge. And I mean, my personal philosophy is that everything looks better in the morning, and maybe it's just that he is unable to relax enough to get a good night's sleep and really sleep soundly, and he doesn't feel better in the morning. I really think that that might be something that would be helpful, if, both emotionally and physically, to be well rested and to feel a little bit better. So I have a second part of the video that I will upload separately, but it basically is a relaxation technique used for kids, and it sort of helps just shut down the body and sort of get ready to enter into a nice slumber. Or it can be used if you're sitting at your desk and you're getting very anxious about the test you're about to take. You can kind of do a mental physical check at the same time. So that's on a separate link that I will include in this. But I thought that following up with the relaxation technique, it almost seemed like the perfect pairing to use the miracle question. And the idea was that coming out of that relaxation technique practice, you would be in a place where you could sort of focus and really think fluidly, and when the question is asked of how would you know things had gotten better if you woke up one morning and things had changed, maybe the answer would be there was in this particular case the answer was I woke up and there was a pot of money, or I woke up and my dad was back, or I woke up and my mom was sitting there making me breakfast, or was going to spend the day with me. So a lot of those answers can sort of lead you to see what the client is looking for from his or her environment, and from those also in his world. And I thought that it would be an appropriate way to kind of start to look at what he views as missing and what he thinks is one of the more important things missing in his life. So that's my story on Jason. There's a second part which shows the relaxation techniques, and I hope you enjoyed this.